I just went through a passage in my memoirs talking about the Fed and the purpose of the Fed and how dangerous the Federal Reserve is for the fabrics of a functioning free economy. And I want to talk about this a little bit here because today, actually, the Fed did have a statement, and it's one of those days when everybody was focused on what Jerome Powell had to say. And I think, in general, first and foremost, in my view, it's sad to see an old man, white hair, in a suit with tie, talking about stuff, and everybody's so focused on it. I think our society still isn't free enough because we allow things like this to happen. I think the establishment of the Fed in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act, was, as I say in my memoirs, the Faustian bargain, or um, some sort of bargain with the devil, where we have a short-term gain with a very, very painful long-term effect that the Fed has. Now, I don't mean to say that people like Jerome Powell or any of the Fed chairs before him are necessarily evil or anything like that. But no matter what, if you create an institution like this, you are bargaining with the devil. You are centralizing the economy. You are coercing people into doing things, sometimes explicitly, sometimes inexplicitly. So that's the problem I have with the Fed, and unfortunately, we are in this situation. So at Orange Capital Partners, we are exposed to the financial markets and the economy as we see it. So we can't change it. There is certainly a way out of this, and that's called crypto and Bitcoin. Cryptocurrencies are the way out of this centralized impact that central banking has on us. And that's why we're very encouraged by it. And that's why we also have a 10% position in Bitcoin. This is not even on podcast. It's December 15th, 2021. This is Krum Delco. Since the last update, we are down 3.4%. The market is roughly flat. For the year, we're up 26%. The market is up 23.2%. We're outperforming by 2.8%. So let's go chronologically here. First, we have the statement of the Fed today. The Fed basically said that they will be tapering faster than expected. They said the economy is on good track and that the inflation problem can be solved by having labor coming back to work. So this is actually a good thing. I think Jerome Powell is stating what we at Orange Capital Partners have been talking about for a while now, that the problem with inflation is labor, and labor is being the labor market is being distorted by the pandemic, or the pandemic situation that has followed the pandemic, or is still going on, no matter how you look at it. The problem is the following. You have a lot of businesses across the economy where people are either scared to go to work or not going to work, getting paid, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. But what that creates is a general shortage of labor. And the general shortage of labor is creating inflation. It's increasing the cost of doing things. So no matter how you look at things, if you have to deliver goods from A to B, if you have to deliver services from A to B, all those kinds of things, they do take longer because labor is more difficult to come by. So having said all that, I don't want to go into a speech here about macroeconomics, but this, in our view, is the fundamental problem that we have right now. So we could have a reversal of this by having labor going back to normal, by having the labor market work as it used to work in the past, which means if you can afford it, you don't work. If you can't afford it, you go to work, and then you go to the kind of jobs that you think you can provide your labor to at the best price. So this is, in general, the way I think the world worked in the past. In today's world, the world works a little bit different. Let's say you are person A working at the port of LA. You are not going to work because maybe somebody in your family has been infected by COVID. So that person needs to be replaced. That person needs to be paid. The replacement needs to be paid. The replacement usually is of lower quality, not because there's nothing wrong with replacements, but you have less experience, less of all that stuff. So in general, if you now extrapolate this throughout the whole economy, you will have a much more longer wait times and higher prices for things. So this is kind of what Jerome Powell is saying. So he's saying, look, we can reverse to normalcy in inflation, but we need to get back to normal work. Now, the way to solve this problem, in our view, is actually to raise rates, to slow down the economy and make it more expensive for everybody, including the government, to pay for what we call the pandemic privileges. Again, I don't want to diminish the importance of being careful about the pandemic and all these things. However, it can't go on like this, that we have this ad hoc, should I go to work, should I not go to work type culture. It's just, unless or if we do accept it, then we will have to have we will have much slower growth and much higher inflation going forward. So it's either or, and unfortunately, in these types of situations, the people that we're trying to protect, which are the most vulnerable, or in other words, the poor, will be the ones most affected. So either it's going to be back to normal by raising rates, slowing down the economy, and bringing down the labor market into some sort of pre-pandemic equilibrium where people go to work because they need the money, and if they don't work, they don't have the money, and therefore they can't afford their lives. Otherwise, why should people go and offer their labor in the labor market? It's a simple equation, and it's happening across the board in the economy. It's happening with older people, younger people. There is no line being drawn here that maybe says, well, it's only this age group or that age group or this sector or that sector. So this in general, I would say this is what I liked about this whole statement of Jerome Powell. The market rallied. We actually were up 3.5% today. The reason we were down since the last update is because we had some drawdowns before. So there was also some of relief, I think, in the markets, because we had fear that maybe the Fed would be much more radical, raise rates surprisingly, or things like that. Now the Fed hasn't done that. So I think overall the market's pretty happy with this situation. A gradual step down from tapering, a gradual increase of interest rates, a gradual slowing the economy. Now, this is, of course, what the Fed is supposed to do, which is the mandate of the Fed is to give full employment and price stability. This is the mandate of the Fed, and given where the markets are today, we have almost full employment and we have price stability, in a sense that the prices long term are expected to not grow more than let's say 2%, which is sort of the stated goal of the Fed. Now, having said all of that, now let me talk a little bit about how I feel about the Fed. First and foremost, I find the problem with the mandate of the Fed is the fundamental problem of the Fed: full employment and price stability. Price stability is relatively easy to define, full employment is not. And actually, some of the questions the journalists asked in the press conference were about, okay, what do you mean full employment? When is it full? What does that even mean? And I think when the Fed, and I think this was after the Great Depression, when this mandate crept into the mission statement of the Fed, maybe inspired by legitimate needs of the political ruling parties and the establishment to have some tools to not have so much suffering as people had during the Great Depression. This was unfortunately crept into the mission statement of the Fed, and once that crept into the Fed, and we had also the decoupling of the gold standard, then inflation started ramping up, because no matter how you look at things, if you give somebody the power to have central credit and the power to print money, they will do it, they will continuously do it. And we are now in a situation, unfortunately, where I think we sort of had a phase transition from a free economy with a central bank that is sometimes interfering to a centrally planned economy where a central bank is much, much more instrumental in what it's doing. And we also have voices creeping in excuse me for using that word too much, but for the mission creep that is happening, we have people like Elizabeth Warren saying that the Fed should be more instrumental in climate change. Other people are saying the Fed should do more about electric cars. And I mean, these are all terrible ideas, because the Federal Reserve of the United States is supposed to be a central bank founded in order to prevent bank crashes. This was the ultimate fundamental purpose of the Fed. And we went from there to, well, let's do something about climate change, let's do something about this, let's do something about that. Of course, the problem with all this partisan let's say, to and fro is that if you're, let's say, a Democrat in power right now and you ask the Fed to do something about electric cars and protect the unions, then tomorrow a Republican administration might ask the Fed to do something else, and so on and so forth. So you are really looking at a situation, in my view, where you're just going to rape this institution and move it into much more cronyism and corruption than it is even today. This is my fundamental fear with the Fed. And now what's the answer? The answer is, of course, cryptocurrencies. I think this is what has been going on now for years. This is why entrepreneurs, libertarians like Elon Musk, I don't know if he's an official libertarian, but people like that that have an open view towards productive innovation, innovation driving activities, things like that. People like that are all on the side of cryptocurrencies because cryptocurrencies is a rule-based monetary system. We need money as an information tool to allocate labor. This is paraphrasing Elon Musk, and I absolutely would sign up for that function of money. Now, having said that, we also need to have some sort of rules and processes of how to manage money. For example, when the economy grows, it's okay to increase the supply of money. When there is a crisis, it's okay to mitigate the crisis. There's a lot of things that you can do as a society, as an economy, to help mitigate bumps in the economy. There is knowledge, to paraphrase David Deutsch, we can create knowledge, economic knowledge, we can create knowledge about crisis, we can create knowledge about, booms and busts. All these things are fine. And I think we have some good knowledge. We are more knowledgeable about the economy now than 100 years ago. However, we are unfortunately not doing the right things because of political mingling and mission creep and all these things. So that's why rule-based monetary systems are a good alternative, and that's why we at Orange Capital Partners also are so adamant also about Bitcoin. We've spoken about this when we initiated our position with Bitcoin. We said that the reason we were initiating Bitcoin is because we believe that Bitcoin fills exactly that void, a rule-based monetary system. We also own Ethereum and Algorand for different reasons. Ethereum is sort of going to be sort of the TCP/IP of the crypto economy, so the protocol, the software, the underlying software, which will allow programmability on top of the protocol, and therefore more commerce, such as NFTs and things like that. And Algorand is doing the same with even more efficiency, doing it for actually global trade. So these are the sort of the three applications that we are invested in right now when it comes to crypto. One is replacing the Federal Reserve System of the United States, or generally central banks, with a rule-based monetary system, which is Bitcoin, which is independent and decentralized. There's no body that you can coerce. You can't put anybody in jail to force them to do something about Bitcoin. Ethereum, you can. There is a leading body of people who are actually involved in Ethereum, and that's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily good for the monetary base of the world, but it's good for programmability and things like that. And then third, we have also Algorand, which is even more extreme than Ethereum in the sense that it's more efficient and cheaper to maintain, therefore much better for global trade. So to summarize, we had today a Fed statement coming out, the market rallied, and I want to use this occasion to give some comments about the Federal Reserve, my concerns about the Federal Reserve as an institution. I mentioned that it was a Faustian bargain to actually even allow the Fed to happen. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was the Faustian bargain that the United States did, back then for good reasons, but opening up the doors for an institution like that to become more and more centralized, more and more corrupt, and provide more and more cronyism to people that shouldn't get it. All these things are unfortunately happening right now. We are now in a position where the government has hijacked the Fed through its debt policy and the massive deficits that we're running. The Federal Reserve is now one of the biggest players in the Treasury market, so the Treasury market is, in our view, dysfunctional. And those are all the signs that were already visible even before the Fed was founded by the people who had concerns about the Fed. And it took decades and decades and decades. But I would say we are now in a phase change where the Federal Reserve is getting worse and worse. And this is nothing against Jerome Powell. He is not the problem. The problem is the institution on its own. And We believe that the way out of this is cryptocurrencies, rule-based monetary systems, in particular Bitcoin. Thank you.